Hey everybody, it is Friday morning. I just got the lights turned on and it suddenly occurred to me it's been a little while since we've done an around the world update. So I thought now would be a good a time as any. You'll get to see the room the way I see it when I turn the lights on. So we're going to find out if we lost any fish overnight or anything else together. So we're looking at my 40-gallon Waterfall tank. And I really need to get in here and thin out the water sprite. It's gotten to the point where it basically has created just a cap over the tank and you don't really see much in the way of light in there at all. Even if I turn on my spotlight, basically just lights up the water sprite. And duckweed, of course. I've got an abundance of duckweed. So not a lot going on in here. I really haven't had a whole lot going on this week, with the exception of my New World tank, where I was doing some work on that, and then I had a little bit of a minor catastrophe on my 125, which we'll get to when we get around to that tank. And so I've been kind of focusing on that this week. So not a lot going on elsewhere. I did do a little bit of experimenting on this tank. I topped it off the other day and checked the nitrates. And with the tank topped off, we were down around 20 parts per million. And this is a tank that I never ever do water changes on. And I suspect it's because I inadvertently created a deep sand bed in this tank. And so I'm kind of using it as an experiment to compare it to some other tanks. I'm going to try to tinker around and see if I can't get some semblance of a deep sand bed going in my office tank upstairs, and maybe we can get a little bit of denitrification going on. So I just saw my Opaline Gourami make an appearance and then drift back into the darkness, so I know he's in there and still doing well. And of course, oh, here he comes. I can see him drifting out now. There he is. And of course I can see the skirt tetras in there still swimming around. I saw the guppies were up here in the plants when I turned the lights on. My Ludwigia here is doing really well. That's this sort of hanging piece. You can see it's actually growing and developing down here, so I'm real happy about that. Plants, in the waterfall part aren't really doing a whole lot this year. I haven't really focused on doing much in there. I was really on the fence about whether or not I was even going to keep this whole waterfall setup or rebuild it. And of course now it's definitely not getting rebuilt. I financially am not in a position to start any new projects here unless they're going to be very, very low budget or free. Moved a few of my periphery plants around. This Rex begonia over here was just getting so tall. I did have it sitting right here, and it was so tall that it was actually getting close enough to the light that I was getting some burning on some of the leaves. You can actually see that leaf is burnt up along the edge, and that was simply from being too close to that LED. It's a very, very powerful light, and those begonias do not need that much light. So that's about all I can think of with this tank. We're going to go ahead and get these lights turned off so that they don't give us huge glare all over everything else in the tank. And for now, we're even going to go ahead and just darken the tank altogether. The fish will get over it. So starting here at my 29 miscellaneous. As usual, nothing to report on this tank, just ticking over like a clock. You can see it's about time I get in there and top the water off a little bit. Probably should get in there and remove some of the water sprite out of this tank. It's getting a little bit too much across the top. I don't like this tank to be overgrown. I dropped the, through this little hole right here is where I dropped the food, and if it just goes in there and lands on the water sprite, that's not ideal. I've also got a little bit of backflow coming through the center of my filter, which is almost always the case. I don't know what it is about this tank and this filter, but within days I can change the filter and I can clean out and scrub out the biofilter, and within a week I've got backflow through the middle again there. I just don't know what it is about this tank, but whatever, it's always been like that, and it's been running like this, turning over like a clock for years and years, so I'm not too concerned about it. Moving on to my 55-gallon Gourami tank. I don't see anything untoward in here, so everybody looks okay. Everyone's doing all right, it looks like. And this is another tank that I need to get in and remove some of the water sprite. I like having water sprite in this tank. It gives the gouramis, and right now I'm only down to my Opaline Gourami right there, and then I've got this little honey gourami, little female honey gourami in here, and that is it. So hopefully I will be bolstering up my gourami community in this tank here fairly shortly. I know I've been talking about that for a while, but I just haven't had the opportunity to do it. I just noticed that the eye of one of my Siamese algae eaters seems to be a little bulged out on one side. I've noticed that before, but I'm not sure if it's something that comes and goes, because I don't notice it all the time. And this morning when I saw it, it just looked very obvious. I was looking at the right angle, and you could tell that one eye was definitely bulging out more than the other. So I'm not sure if that's something I need to be concerned about or what's going on with that. But now that I've noticed it again, I'm definitely going to have to keep my eye on that, because that could be a sign of an infection, or all sorts of things might be going on that could cause a fish's eye to swell up like that and get that bulging eye. Especially if it's only one eye, that's definitely an indication that it's, you know, an infection or something going on in that one eyeball. So, or it could be nothing at all. That fish might always have had that and I've just never noticed. So I'm going to have to keep my eyes open on that. No pun intended, of course. So that's about all I can think of with my gourami tank. Again, not a lot going on in the fish room this week. At least not in all of these tanks. We will get to some of the tanks where I've been doing some more work, but we'll get to them when we get to them. This is my 55-gallon tank. And even though this was once upon a time my angelfish tank, and you would probably think of the angelfish as being the feature fish of this tank, it is my diamond tetras in this tank that always steal the show and certainly steal my attention. So I'm not going to sit here and gush about my diamond tetras like I normally do. I've got enough videos out there specifically just about the diamond tetras and me gushing all over them. And other than that, not a lot to talk about. Probably could stand getting in here and doing a water change. It's been a little while, not too terribly long. You can tell by the lack of pleco poop all over the bottom. That tends to accumulate pretty quickly, so if you don't see a lot of it, that means it's been hasn't been too long since I've been in here doing some basic maintenance and water change. So you can see the glass needs to get wiped down. I got a little bit of that reddish cyanobacteria growing. That's actually what all of that dark coloration you can see there is. That is from the way my pleco scrapes the leaves, and it scrapes everything that it can scrape off of the surface, and all of the little divots and depressions. Think about like if you took a piece of chalk and you went and did a rubbing, on a gravestone or something, and you'd get the negative of the depressions. Well, that's kind of what that is, but it's just that red cyanobacteria. And I believe if I ever take that big pleco out of this tank, then I would have an awful lot of cyanobacteria starting to grow and develop in this tank. Also wondering what's going on down here in the bottom now that I'm in here looking at it. It's getting much, much more open. I know I've just pulled a few dead leaves out of that bottom area, and I can see I need to pull these dead leaves out, and that's going to open it up even more. But that is actually just sort of free flowing open water right there, whereas it used to look kind of like this. You just couldn't really see through it. So that's interesting. I've been thinking about changing this tank up a little bit. All it really has is two Anubias, one on either side, and sort of a gap in the middle. So there's all kinds of things I could do to this tank to change it up. Not least of which would be chopping a big chunk of this Anubias off and really getting that small. But these Anubias are 6 years old now, maybe, something like that. And I've cut them back many times, so they're definitely big old plants. I don't know, we'll see. But it really is my least planted, kind of most boring tank when you look at it. It's just got two Anubias in it and nothing else. Well, there's all my Java fern I got growing in here, so I guess I can't say there's nothing else in here. There is some Java. Alright, moving on. Looking at my 40 breeder. Just got distracted by my rainbow fish there. Was munching on something. I couldn't figure out what it was because I have not fed the tank yet this morning. But if you see that little piece of leaf swirling around, it was chewing on something like that. So apparently that rainbow fish back there likes his veggies too. Nothing really going on in here. I will say, if you can see my dwarf pike cichlid sticking her face out right there, I was watching her the other day and I did something that startled her, and she moved so fast it was like an arrow out of a bow. I mean, she vanished. She took off like a shot. And it was really an eye-opener for me. I know that fish can swim way faster than a lot of people tend to think. Like, I'll be out fishing, and people, when they're retrieving their line, they're worried about whether or not the fish can catch it. And I always tell people, you can crank that thing in as fast as you can possibly crank it in, and there's no fish out there that couldn't easily just swim up and still grab that. You know, fish can swim fast compared to things like how fast you're cranking a lure in or something like that. But when I saw her dash the way she dashed, I just imagined the predatory aspect of it. She's a predator. She lays low and she looks up, and when an unsuspecting prey fish swims above her, she will dart out and grab it. And that's all I could think of when I saw her dash with that speed like that, was the chances of any fish escaping that kind of attack and how fast she moved. It really, really surprised me. Again, even for somebody that is well aware of how fast predatory fish can really dash when they want to, you know, grab out and snatch a piece of prey or something. But she was just incredibly fast. So, made me want to get one of the big full-grown pike cichlids. But in order to do that, I will need to have a big tank like this available. And right now, I don't have a big tank like this available. This is my 125-gallon New World tank. And I've spent the last couple of days getting in here, doing some maintenance, rearranging it. And most of all, I've added this big piece of wood right here. Not entirely happy with the way it looks. I'm certainly not unhappy with the way it looks, but I don't know if this is how it's going to stay. My initial idea for a change was to take this and just move the whole thing this way so that we could kind of continue on with these lines like this. But I hadn't even thought about it. If you actually look at the way this is curved, if I lay that down this way, it's not going to look right. That's going to be pointing towards the front of the tank. I'm going to have to roll it backwards, and then the lines aren't going to go right. So I'm still sort of visually rearranging that, or mentally rearranging it, I guess you could say. I'm just trying to think about it in different positions and angles and so on and so forth. And I'm not yet ready to get in there and really start messing around with it. I want to let the tank settle back down a little bit, let the fish calm down. It's only been a couple of days, and I just want to sort of let myself digest what it looks like in there and everything, and then in time we can start maybe thinking about moving it or repositioning it. I still need to get in there and get those creek chubs out. I still want to get that big suckerfish out of there. I like the suckerfish well enough, but it's just a big bio load for a fish that isn't really necessary. It's not like a cleaning fish per se. It does eat off the bottom, but so do all of the minnows, and so does everything else. All the fish in there go down and peck stuff off of the bottom. So it's not like I need that suckerfish in there to collect up any food that the other fish missed or anything, you know? So I don't know. Like I say, it's just a lot of bio load for not a lot of return on the fish. I could get a much smaller fish that would do the same job. Anyway, that's what's going on in the New World tank this week. And I still really, really like the way that looked. You can even see right here where it's sort of blackened and then you've got this lighter color. That actually looks like scrape marks already, that something's been in there chewing on that. Interesting. Alright, moving on to my 40 breeder gudgeon tank, purple spotted gudgeon tank. I got in here fairly recently and did some maintenance. I trimmed out a lot of the plants. I probably already covered that in the last Round the World update. I honestly don't even remember when it was. But nothing much has changed in this tank. It always just kind of sits here. I got that gudgeon in there who I'm sure is still in here somewhere. But I do not see it at the moment. So, you know, same old, waiting for the plants to start growing back. I removed a bunch of roots. I removed a bunch of the, oh, there he is. So I removed a bunch of the roots, and I cut down all of the water temple plant here that was above the water surface, because once again I had aphids on it, and by cutting it at the water line, you know, aphids don't live underwater, so I should have removed all of the aphids, and now we're going to let that plant start growing back. It was suggested, or you know, it was discussed whether or not I could get in there and really remove some of the root mass from that temple plant, and that would allow for a lot more water to flow, and a lot of this sort of cruddy, dirty looking stuff you can see. You know, I can get a lot of that kind of stuff out of there. But I don't know how vigorous and how much I want to go in there and do that, because it is, you know, the root mass of the plant. And if you do too much damage to the roots, you can send the plant into shock, and there's all sorts of things you can do that will greatly impact the plant if you go messing around with its root system like that. So it's not bothering me. It does kind of make the tank a little dirtier. It really does sort of restrict the flow of water in there, and you can see I get some grunge buildup and stuff, but all in all, I'm not too worried about it, so we'll see. But as usual, not a lot going on in my purple spotted gudgeon tank either. So this tank, my 125 here, let's get around my waterfall so we can kind of see the whole tank. Now, if throughout this video you've been wondering what that obnoxious noise in the background is, it's that. And it's getting so loud. I believe my new filter that I have ordered will be here maybe today or tomorrow. I'm honestly not even sure what today's date is or what the date of the delivery was supposed to be, but it's going to be within a day or two. I know I wasn't able to get it on like the overnight or the 2-day delivery or whatever, but I did order it on Amazon, and it will be coming. I don't know why oh, there we go. It's just one of those things that always bugs me whenever you can see the cloth folded up and the light shining out like that. I don't know why that annoys me so much, but it really does. So anyway, I'll be getting my new filter in. If you didn't already see the videos or follow along, the filter got damaged years ago when I ran the UV sterilizer or clarifying light continually 24/7, and over the course of a year or so it wound up deteriorating the plastic trays inside, and I made a modification to the tray. Long story short, my modification is what was causing the filter to leak. And then that rattly noise is just something that's been slowly increasing over time. The last 6 months or so, that thing's been getting noisier and noisier. And yes, I know I can buy replacement parts. I can buy new trays to put in there. I could probably buy a new impeller. I could probably disassemble it and get in there and look at the new impeller shaft and all that. And none of that is worth it as far as I'm concerned. Those Sun filters are so inexpensive, and I've gotten so many years out of them that it's not worth it. As far as the trays, I've looked into that before. I can get a 3-pack of trays. Of course, I'd need 4 of them, so they only sell them in 3 packs, which makes sense. You know, it's a 4-tray unit, so they sell them in 3-tray bundles. Perfect sense. And 3 trays would cost me about $45 plus shipping. I can buy a whole new filter for $90. You know, that's just crazy to me to spend half the money on 3 out of the 4 trays that I would need when I can simply buy a new filter. And considering this one leaked, and it's got the rattly noise in there, and so on and so forth, it's just time to say goodbye to this one. Thank it for its years of service, and move on to a nice brand new one for the $90. And again, it's just not worth me getting in there and tinkering with it. I've actually looked at trying to get to the impeller before just to clean them up, and you've got to start dismantling parts of the components inside even just to get to the impeller. So I'm not a handyman. I'm not good at doing that kind of stuff. It's easier for me to simply get my 5 years use out of it and then move on to one that's going to be nice and brand new and not making any noise. As far as the tank goes, excuse me. As far as the tank goes, I've lost 3 of my rainbow fish. I lost 2 of the males and 1 of the females, and specifically I'm talking about these, the Millennium Rainbows, the albino Millennium Rainbows. So I used to have 3 males and 4 females. I found a dead male the other day, and then when I started looking around, all I could find was 1 remaining male and 3 females. So I've lost 1 female and 2 of the males, and I have no idea why. I was treating the tank for a skinny loach. If you've noticed that smaller of the 2 loaches swimming around, it's looking pretty skinny. I'm not sure if it's going to make it at this point. My other loach, my larger loach, is still back there. That one to me does not look like it's getting skinny yet. I've had one person say that they think it looks like it's getting skinny, but I don't, and nobody else has said that it looks like it's getting skinny to them yet. So we'll have to wait and see. And I do actually want to shoot a video talking about this whole medication and skinny loach, ordeal I've been going through. There's just so many things in it that just don't line up for me, that just don't make sense. I know that I'm told that I should be doing this, that, and the other thing with the medication, but then when the medication doesn't do what it's supposed to do, what then? Is the medication not working? Am I not using the medication right? Or is it possible that I'm treating for something that I don't have? And that's certainly an option. If they say, okay, this is the symptoms, that all matches up, this is what you should do, that all matches up, and then I do it, and then I don't get the results, then, why don't I get the results? You can't say, oh, well, they're right about this, they're right about that, but then you're wrong when you did everything they said and then you didn't get the results they said. If I did everything they say and I don't get the results they say, then maybe it's not what they say it is. Maybe it's something else. And so that's what I'm finding with my treatment on the loach in here. I've tried multiple different treatments and none of them are doing the things that they're supposed to do. And I don't think that I have some sort of odd medication that, doesn't work because I'm using it, but it works when everybody else uses it. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. Again, I want to shoot a whole video where I sit down and discuss my thoughts about that. I'm a little dubious about the pathology of the disease that the fish supposedly have and so on and so forth. So again, maybe one of these days I'll sit down and air my thoughts about all that if anybody's interested in hearing it. Again, it won't be anything conclusive, just me kind of thinking out loud about what in the world is going on with my loaches, because at this point, as I've said, I'm beginning to doubt that it's what everybody seems to think it is. It may just be something else altogether, and there's probably not a lot I'm going to be able to do about it, and I've already just sort of accepted the fact that that loach is probably going to be dead here, at some point. It's getting skinnier and skinnier, and I don't foresee it suddenly fattening up one day, so it's probably just going to continue on that trend. Anyway, that's what's going on in my 125. Again, that's been a little bit more of a concern of my week than most of what everything else has been going on around here. My 20-gallon Angelfish tank is still doing well. I had a little bit of a kerfuffle with this one a couple weeks ago, I guess. I did some really, really vigorous gravel vacuuming and got in there and did some scrunching around, had some chemi-clean going at the time, and I wound up getting a little disruption in my nitrogen cycle. It was no big deal. I had a few days of cloudy water. I got a little tiny bit buildup of ammonia, but most of my tanks have a pH that is slightly below 7, and therefore the ammonia that builds up in the tank is actually converted into ammonium and is not harmful to the fish, and so I wasn't too worried about it and didn't even bother to do any water changes. I just kind of let it ride for a few days, and slowly but surely everything came back to normal. The tank cleared up and we're back to everything looking good. So, got my quarantine tank down there. I do have a fish in it right now, but that's going to have to wait. You're going to have to be surprised on that one, so we're not going to get to see what's in my quarantine tank just yet. My 40 breeder here. Get this forward light turned on, if I can. Oh, there we go. Once again, not much to talk about, nothing really going on. It's probably about time I get in there and do a water change. You can see all of the dead snail shells from Butterbean's former dinners. My snail tank has had an explosion of growth lately. I've been putting a lot of food in there and really trying to get those snails to breed like crazy, and it's been working. So whereas Butterbean was getting snails maybe twice a week and then getting freeze-dried krill the rest of the time, I would say over the last week or so he's probably gotten the reverse. It's been mostly snails with the odd freeze-dried krill from time to time. And you can even see right there, that is a freeze-dried krill that did not get eaten and has gotten soft and sunk to the bottom. And likewise, that is a freeze-dried krill that has gotten soft and sunk to the bottom. So it hasn't been too long since I got in here and did a water change, but it probably wouldn't hurt to get in here and do a little bit of maintenance as far as cleaning it up. I could get some of that Java fern cleaned out a little bit, get this glass wiped down, although that's not that big of a deal to me. It actually kind of gives him a little bit of security from this end of the tank. But the filter intake is starting to look pretty rough back there. And I honestly couldn't even tell you the last time I changed the filter on this tank. The filter on this tank is a little Sun 303B. It's a smaller one that only has 3 trays in it. And it moves less water than the standard 304B that most people are familiar with. So, never really had a problem with it on this tank. I used to have a filter like that on my other 40 breeder. Well, one of my other 40 breeders. Well, the one I call my 40 breeder, the one that's got my Crenocycla compressiceps in it, or my Crenocycla regani in it, my dwarf pike cichlid, that had one of these little canister filters on it for a long time. And I don't know why I bothered to take it off, but I did. I wound up just going back with the hang on the back filter, and that's what's on there now. But those canister filters work great. As I've said before, I'm a big fan of the Sun filters. I think all the other filters, even though I've never really used any of them, I just can't imagine spending that kind of money to get what effectively is a canister with a pump and some hoses. That's all I need. I need to move the water. I need a place for it to move through, and I can put some filter biological material in it, and I need a way to pump it back into the tank. Anything else is unnecessary bells and whistles as far as I'm concerned, and that's why I like the Sun filters, because it's a pump, pumps it through the filter, and it pumps it back into my tank, and that's all I need it to do. So there you go. That's about it. Like I said, that was a real spur of the moment. Didn't really know what we were going to see as we went around, but I also don't know what my day is going to entail today, and I wanted to at least have a quick walk around the room with everybody. Have a nice little impromptu round the world update there. So there you go. There's my Friday morning. I've got to get my day started, and we will see what happens from here. So thanks for watching that one. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you real soon in the next one.